Hello and good morning from Rockland. I'm your host, Thomas Stockting. Coming up on this week's programme, COVID-19 update as flu season approaches, cyber breach in Clarence-Rockland, Ontario lay out roadmap to reopening, new councillor for the city of Clarence-Rockland, and discount bus fares in Prescott-Russell. Ward 2 in the city of Clarence-Rockland has a new councillor, as on Wednesday evening, Kyle Sear was sworn in and will serve the rest of the current term. The post was left vacant following the election of Mayor Mario Zant earlier this summer, and the local council took the decision to take applications and hire a candidate rather than opening it to a public vote.
Ward 2 councillor appointment. The selection committee, which comprised of 5 members of council, including Samuel Caldarelli, Can Grimard, André Gilalonde, Diane Choignard, and myself, interviewed 6 candidates who submitted a letter of interest for the position of councillor for Ward 2 on October 26, 2021. The members of the selection committee based their evaluation of the candidates on the following criteria: experience and skill, ability to express oneself in both official languages, as well as performance at the interview. The selection committee recommends that Mr. Kyle Sear be appointed as councillor for Ward 2 for the remainder of the term to November 15th, 2022. Je voulais dire quelque chose, and I just want to express our gratitude, and I think this comes from all of the members who were there yesterday, for all of the candidates that submitted their application. Everyone was amazing. It was a very hard decision. Like I said, we based it on the following criteria. And we want to make sure that we thank everyone that was present. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Whereas further to declaring the seat of Councillor Ward 2 vacant, Council opted to fill the vacancy by appointment. And whereas the 6 candidates that submitted letters of interest were interviewed by the selection committee on October 26, 2021, be it resolved that bylaw number 2021-114, being a bylaw to appoint Kyle Sear as councillor for Ward 2 for the remainder of this term of council, be adopted as recommended by the selection committee. Be it resolved that Council of the City of Clarence-Rockland hereby adopts bylaw number 2021-113, being a confirmatory bylaw for this special meeting of October 27, 2021.
That was the fastest meeting I think we've ever had. Merci tout le monde.
There we go, a fast meeting there indeed. And we'll be hopefully bringing you a one-on-one interview with Ward 2's new councillor in the coming weeks. The city of Clarence-Rockland was also the victim of a cyber breach this week. The city is said to have retained the services of a team of cybersecurity experts, as well as having notified the local OPP. The investigation is ongoing as to the source of the breach, and we'll be bringing you more information on this subject as and when it comes to light. In the meantime, last year I spoke to the city's Chief Information Officer, Mike Cousineau, about how you can keep your accounts safe at home.
Well, people tend to use words that are associated with them, which they should definitely try to avoid using, like the name of one of their children or their pet with a date of birth combination. Those things can be looked up on Facebook very often, or any other social media, and then someone can feed that into a computer to try to come up with possibilities for passwords and to exploit the account. Harder passwords are phrases, and phrases as simple as "I like cats," something as simple as that. Right off the bat, if no other changes is made to the password, then that phrase becomes very, very difficult because it is not mathematically assigned to the person. So it is something that is just "I like cats." So when you remove all the spaces in there right off the bat, it makes it harder. Then just flip some lowercase letters to uppercase letters, and then switch some letters to numbers. An A can be very, very easily replaced with the ampersand that we use in an email. An O can become a 0, an I can become an exclamation point or a 1. You make a few changes like that, and you have a very, very strong password, which makes it almost impossible. I would never say always completely impossible, but really, really very difficult for somebody to hack into.
And when we have these more complicated passwords, they can often be a little bit harder to remember. And we have so many different accounts online these days in the 21st century as it is. Your online banking, you have Facebook, you have online shopping accounts. Is it important to have different passwords across all of these different accounts? And if so, why?
Well, definitely, if the more passwords you have, the more different passwords you have, the harder it is for somebody to exploit an account. If you have, if it's a difficult password, you can reuse it in certain accounts, but to really try to make them different everywhere, just so that if somebody is able to get your Facebook account and you're using the same account password for your banking account, that could be a problem. So obviously let's not make it too easy for them to do. So using different passwords is definitely the way to go. Harder to remember for sure, but phrases tend to be a little bit easier to remember than just, oh, what did I use last? Did I add a number? Did I add the number 3? So like the phrase "I like cats" just tends to be a little bit easier to remember.
Absolutely. Hopefully you're not giving us too much of an insight into your own passwords.
No,
Mike.
I always use the same example, one that I've never used before.
And Mike, before I let you go, there is just one other element to this, which is how the frequency of changing passwords. How often would you recommend that people change their passwords?
As frequently as possible. I know it can be difficult, can be a lot to manage. I say for online banking and any account that can be associated with your credit card, I would say definitely to try to do it as at a minimum every 3 months, monthly as possible. And then for other less critical ones, at a minimum once a year. But again, the more often we change them, just the harder it gets for somebody to have access to our accounts.
Mike Crisino there talking about the importance of changing your passwords often and using something that can't be guessed. So hopefully you take this as your annual reminder to go and change your password. Now, late last week, the Ontario government announced their plan for reopening the province, calling it a gradual, cautious approach to manage the virus now and moving forward. As of this week, on October 25th, capacity limits were lifted, including physical distancing, in places where proof of vaccination is required, such as restaurants, bars, indoor recreational facilities, such as gyms, and more. Other sectors, such as barbers, amusement parks, museums, and such, will also be allowed to lift their capacity limits if they make the choice to implement proof of vaccination, according to the provincial government. As long as the number of cases throughout the province remains stable, limits at events in businesses like nightclubs or even wedding receptions where dancing is involved, they will be lifted on the 15th of November. The next landmark then comes in the new year. For the full list of the changes and when they may occur, head to news.ontario.ca. Now, speaking of the pandemic, let's take a glance at the COVID-19 situation in our region. At the time of recording, there were 36 active cases in Prescott-Russell, with Dr. Paul Roumeliotis of the Eastern Ontario Health Unit speaking positively of the residents who contracted the virus during the outbreak at the Francois Residence a couple of weeks ago. There remains only 5 active cases in Clarence-Rockland, and the region's rolling average is now down to 15.5. With flu season just around the corner, the EOHU released a statement reminding people to get their flu shots. Dr. Paul Roumeliotis, the Chief Medical Officer for the EOHU, explained the importance of getting the flu shot, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The flu vaccine is available, and as you know, in Ontario, we recommend it to everybody, particularly in elderly people 6 months of age, between 6 months and 5 years of age, young children, and people with medical conditions. But in general, it's available to everybody. Last year, it's difficult to predict every year, but last year, understandably so, we had restrictions that not only prevented COVID from spreading, but it also prevented the flu because it spread the same way. We also had a marked decrease in other respiratory pathogens circulating last year. And last year, the flu season was very low, but we vaccinated a lot of people because we didn't want to get a twindemic of having flu outbreaks and COVID outbreaks at the same time. That would both be uncomfortable for the individual getting it, but also uncomfortable and very difficult on our healthcare system. This year in Australia, again, this past, like I'm talking this season that they just had, their numbers were low again with the flu. However, we do believe that because we're now seeing, unlike last year, I'm seeing more and more respiratory viruses, non-flu, just cold viruses circulating, particularly in daycares and so on, that I do believe that because we're loosening restrictions, there'll be more opportunity for the flu and other respiratory viruses to circulate. So it's important even more this year to get vaccinated against the flu, because unlike last year, I believe we will have a bigger flu season. Because we have our emergency rooms, our assessment centers are there to be able to assess people that have respiratory symptoms, and we call them influenza-like symptoms. So, which is fever, cough, runny nose, and so on. COVID and the flu present the same way. So it's gonna, even if you don't have the flu, you're gonna think it's COVID, you're gonna go to a COVID assessment center. And if many people do that at the same time, that will overwhelm that system. So that's why we want to, again, vaccinate against the flu as well, to keep that down. So there will be less need to go to the emergency room or to an assessment center for that matter.
A very important point there about getting your flu shot this year to be able to not act as another catalyst to spur on more problems, as if we haven't had enough over the last 18 months. A human case of West Nile virus has also been reported in the EOHU this past week. Although the risk of becoming seriously ill for the majority of people isn't particularly common, serious illness can occur for some, including the elderly. Dr. Roumeliotis explained how the EOHU monitors the local mosquito population for the virus and reminded us of the danger of the disease.
Every year, we always launch a West Nile virus campaign. Mosquitoes carry the West Nile virus itself, and they get it from birds. And then they bite and infect an individual through a bite. They literally inject it into a person's bloodstream. Although in many people, you have an asymptomatic, no symptoms or very mild symptoms. In elderly, you can get severe symptoms, headache, meningitis, those type of things. And so what we do every year, we have a campaign where we actually measure we have pools of mosquitoes and we test them. This year, we didn't have any positive pools. However, we also monitor cases, and we always tend to see, particularly when it's a humid and rainy summer, we get a lot of pooling of water, many mosquitoes. We tend to see mosquito and West Nile virus more towards the end of the year, and into October, November. And so that's why we did the press release to remind people that West Nile virus is still a danger, and you should always be careful about mosquitoes until everything freezes. Then they die off. But in the interim, we need to be careful and be mindful of that. So that's why we did the press release, because we're not thinking about it. We're always talking COVID and flu, but because we had that case, we wanted to let people know that the danger is still out there. And people seem to sometimes equate it with like, oh, mosquito summer, but no, we get them into the fall until we get a freeze.
And people, just to clarify, people can only get it through a mosquito bite. It can't be passed from person to person.
No. Once you have it, you're not contagious.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Ball.
You're welcome.
There we go. We heard Bruce de la Cruz there, our journalist here at TVC22, speaking to Dr. Paul about that. If you'd like some more information on the virus and how you can protect yourself, visit the EOHU's website. There's plenty of good tools on there. Now, great news for public transport users in the United Counties of Prescott-Russell, as the publicly available bus, PR Transpo, is reducing its costs. The pilot project, which started back in June, previously charged $1 per kilometre, but in an effort to make longer trips more affordable for its users, it will now be reduced to 25 cents per kilometre after the first 10K. So you pay $1 per kilometre for the first 10 kilometres, and then it drops down to 25 cents. Economic Development and Tourism Director for the United Counties of Prescott-Russell, Ms. Carole Lavigne, said since the implementation of this on-demand service pilot that they put in place in June, they've noticed that riders tend to do shorter distances than they maybe anticipated, and this change is in order to encourage people to use PR Transpo for longer regional trips. In a presentation given on Wednesday, Ms. Lavigne showed that the average trip duration is just over 11 minutes, with 566 total trips from the 71 users over the course of the past 17 weeks. So going well, but if you want more information about this on-demand public transport service in the region, you can either head to the Prescott-Russell website or you can give the team there a call. They're always very responding and very helpful as well. Now, at the United Counties, the Residence Prescott-Russell was also on the agenda this week, as members of the United Counties were shown a video demonstrating the progress of the new building that's set to be completed late next year. Great to see some amazing progress happening on such a big infrastructure project for our region. So that is it for this week, though. As ever, if there's a story within the community that you think needs some more light shined on, then you can reach out to us. You can get in touch by calling the station at the number on the screen below me now, or extension number 4. If I don't pick up, leave a voicemail. I will try and get back to you as quickly as I can. Or you can get to me on the email address as well. That's nouvelle@tvc22.ca. And for now, it's good morning from me. It's good morning from the team here at TVC22. Have a spooky Halloween weekend, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.